on Monday of last week, so Sunday was the 8th of August, Monday was the 9th. On Monday the 9th, former Senator Ted Stevens, who was been the representative for Alaska, was killed in a plane crash. Now, Ted Stevens had certainly had very, very close links with BP. I mean, he was a senator in Alaska when BP acquired Amoco, when BP became the dominant player on the North Slope of Alaska, when BP was pushing to drill in the Arctic Reserve, the National Reserve. He was there when the pipeline incident happened, and of course he defended BP. Anyway, he had recently announced that he was going to donate all of his memoirs, his diaries, and his personal papers to the University of Alaska. Well, the moment he made that announcement, BP stepped in with a donation of $1 million to help with the archiving of that material. Oh. And of course, their motivation would have been to literally go through that material with a fine-tooth comb and take out anything that would, of course, be incriminating.
And a special CIA black marker.
Exactly. You know, the redacting would come into the vocabulary again. So, you know, in 2 days, Matt Simmons and Ted Stevens, and you know, I put out a newsletter last week, and basically I asked the question. I said, you know, is there a BP hit squad on the loose? Or BP financed, I should say. It wouldn't be a BP hit squad, it'd be BP financed.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you know, some of the other factors that made me very, very suspicious, and I've taken some footage of Tony Hayward giving evidence to the various hearings, and his performance at those hearings was completely and utterly unacceptable for a chief executive officer.
Yeah.
And I think that what Tony Hayward was basically trying to do was let it be known that he had experienced a situation that was totally outside his spectrum of experience. Because here he was as the CEO of the company, and he was making the observations that he couldn't answer the questions because he wasn't involved in the decision-making process. Now, as a CEO, you don't make that kind of observation.
Exactly.
So I think, you know, we started to come to the conclusion that this was a takedown. Now, what was the motivation? Well, the former CEO of BP, John Brown, had made a lot of enemies in his tenure. Now, John Brown was very, very well connected. This is, of course, Lord Brown of Madingley. He was very, very well connected. I mean, he had been a regular attender at the Bilderberger meetings for a number of years. And so there was nothing that really could be done until John Brown was out of the loop. So Brown's out of the loop for, a couple of years or so. A very young, inexperienced guy like Tony Hayward, who's awareness of the geopolitical arena, the corporate geopolitical arena, was probably quite shallow based on, you know, his experience. And consequently, he was an easy fool guy. So when you see, I mean, I'm not going to name the name on the radio because just in case there's any sort of legal ramifications, and I don't want to bring you guys into that equation. But I am absolutely convinced that the individual that I name on the DVD, I'm not suggesting for one moment that he was the architect of what occurred. He would have been following instructions. And this is where we get on to the hidden hierarchy. And I've talked about the hidden hierarchy in the US before because I worked in the US for a number of years. And I had first-hand experience of the hidden hierarchy and the way that the fraternities effectively control all major decisions in the industrial military complex in the US.
Absolutely.
And so this guy would have simply gotten a phone call. I mean, the questions that need to be asked is basically, was he part of the fraternities? And the fraternity that I would bet a significant sum of money on, I think that it will ultimately be revealed that the guy is Phi Beta Kappa.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting for me is that a few days before Matt Simmons and I separately and independently named this guy as the shall I say, prime suspect.
Mm-hmm.
All photographs of this guy and his counterpart on the rig were removed from the web. Now, such is the power of BP here that, you cannot find any photographs of this guy and his counterpart on the web at all now. Now, this guy has so far refused to give evidence at any of the hearings, pleading the Fifth, which of course is the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which gives an individual the opportunity to refuse to give evidence on the basis that any evidence they may give would be self-incriminating.
Right, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't exactly... The next hearing, by the way, is due on the 20th. It's due to run from the 20th to the 23rd in Houston, Texas. And I wouldn't fall off my chair if this guy fails to appear at the hearing. And I would definitely recommend he stays well clear of any hot tubs.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, they're good at taking people out at the right time. I mean, the old plane crash scenario is one of the favourites as well, isn't it?
Oh, well, and of course, the plane crash, well, yes, I mean, anybody who really needs to take a look at that should read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yeah, I've got that one.
And, it does spell it out in words of one syllable. But, Matthew Simmons would have been a prime target because he was part of the fraternity.
Yep.
He had effectively contravened the rules of the fraternity. I mean, he, at the very least, he was a member on the Council on Foreign Relations. And once you basically, sell your soul and become a member of that club, you're expected to abide by the rules. I mean, this is why Benazir Bhutto was taken out. Benazir Bhutto was taken out because she broke the rules, because she stated during a David Frost interview that, was it, I think she inferred that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, wasn't Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had murdered, Osama bin Laden?
Yeah.
And David Frost, of course, didn't turn a hair. I mean, either he wasn't concentrating or he was already in the know and he knew damn well that was just one question he didn't go anywhere near.
He was expecting that one coming.
Yeah. So, either way, Benazir Bhutto was basically making a public statement that Osama bin Laden was dead.
Yep, that's it.
And David Frost just let it go straight over his head. And the BBC edited out that particular statement until, of course, they were reminded that, by those who had caught it in the first releases. And I think ultimately they did put it back in. But, the bottom line is, if you are a member of the club, if you breach the rules of the club, and the rules, of course, require that you keep quiet on anything sensitive like that, once you step over the line, unfortunately, you put your life and your neck on the line. So, we do have to recognise I might not have agreed with Matthew Simmons for many, many years, but in the last few weeks, the guy had gone up in my estimation. In fact, the only thing he stated that I disagreed with was that he was advocating the nuclear option for sealing the well. And I definitely would not advocate that because the Russians, that in the 1960s with a gas well, and why do you think they've never done it again?
It's a mess.
So,
I don't even know how they could even consider that legitimate option.
It's completely outrageous. So, now let's move on. So why did they do it? Well, apart from taking out BP and breaking up BP so that BP was decimated, the impact on the British public is horrendous and will be horrendous because ultimately BP is going to have to be responsible. If BP goes bankrupt, then there's going to be pressure for effectively the British taxpayer to pick up the responsibility. Either way, this is going to hit a lot of pension investment. So the pain of this has really yet to be fully realised. Mm-hmm. But now let's look at what's going on in the Gulf because what we see in the British media and the European media is an outrageous effort to convince everybody that it's all over, the oil's all gone, and that it was completely exaggerated, it was all overhyped. And it was a massive PR campaign to demonise BP.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the question I gave you originally, that originally I actually thought it was more of a fear-based operation, but we do have, now that you're obviously elaborating a bit more, we do have a couple of relevant questions that you might want to touch on as well. Is it part of an operation to damage the Gulf Loop? I don't know if he's on about the Gulf Stream, to bring on a colder time, such as an ice age. You could obviously link that to an excuse, which is, oh yeah, we needed to do this to stop global warming.
Global warming, yeah.
And is Corexit disguised as is it basically a bioweapon?
Yes, is the answer to that. Absolutely it is. Without any shadow of doubt. I mean, we have the most outrageously toxic chemical, that's banned pretty much everywhere else in the world, and BP drop 1.1 million gallons of stuff. Wow. Even after being told to stop spraying it by the Environmental Protection Agency, they were still spraying it. We also know they've been spraying it over land. Now, let's have a look at what's occurring. The Corexit has the effect of pushing the oil beneath the surface.
Right.
So what the Corexit does is, from a cosmetic standpoint, it makes the surface look clear. But what it's done is it's pushed this whole layer of oil beneath the surface. And what it's doing is it's effectively creating a dead zone in the Gulf, because the sunlight is not getting through into the Gulf. So it's killing off all the marine life that is living beneath this layer of oil.
Well, it's important, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, we're talking about taking out all the sort of plankton, and it's going to affect the whole of the food chain in the Gulf. But and apart from the fact that it is still washing up on the shores, I mean, I have some video footage that's been sent to me, showing residents who will now only swim in their swimming pools, and yet the tourists are going to the beach. And what you've got is the local residents going up to the tourists and saying, why are you swimming in this? And when you're swimming, what do you feel? And there's a wonderful piece of footage. Oh, well, wonderful. Sorry, I've used the wrong word there. A terrible piece of footage, which, as a young girl, and this guy walks up to the young girl and he says, so you've just been swimming in this? So how do you feel? She said, I'm all itchy.
Wonder why.
And yeah, really. And you got kids running around with oil on their feet. And oil is a toxin at 11.2 parts per million. Corexit is a toxin at 1.2 parts per million.
Shit. So
Corexit is 10 times more toxic than oil. Corexit is clear. And of course, because it's dispersing the oil, in fact, what it's doing is it's spreading it out, so it actually appears clear, but it's still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now you've got the next problem, because if you've got a whole layer of light crude, effectively unadulterated but floating on the surface, one, you have a fair opportunity to actually scoop it up. Two, because it's heavy and because it is what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a layer. Right. It's all together. It's not going to get sucked up into the Gulf system. Right. Now it's all been broken up, right? It's getting sucked up into the tropical storm systems, and the hurricane season runs between 1st of June and basically end of November. So you've got this 5-month period, the 6-month period, where the Gulf of Mexico is feeding into the storm systems. Now, on July 23rd, all of the shipping was removed from the Gulf, supposedly because of Tropical Storm Bonnie. Now, one of the other things that Matthew Simmons inadvertently let slip was that the live feed that was being put out from the camera below the surface by BP switched to a different well after July 23rd.
That's the one I saw, yeah.
Which is, of course, incredible. So Matthew Simmons, full credit to him for picking that up, and we can see that on the lambda coordinates from the post and pre July 23rd live feeds.